Hi there, I'm James Apogee, and this is Coffee and a Case Note. Team, today we are talking about setting aside statutory demands. Now, a statutory demand is a demand for payment that someone can make of a company, and the company either has to pay it or ask the court to set it aside, and if it fails to do one of those two things, then it's liable to be wound up. So they're pretty scary things. So what are we talking about today? We've got a settlement agreement, and the settlement agreement relates to proceedings where we have one party seeking a declaration, right? And with all these parties, we're talking about a sort of fairly complex family arrangement. So the party seeking the declaration is our son, and our son says, I want a declaration that this $1.5 million loan account recorded with one of the family entities is indeed a loan owed to me. Now, those proceedings don't actually go to hearing, they're settled. And they're settled pursuant to an agreement. And the content of that agreement is that the consortium, or a large group of these family companies and family entities, agrees to use its best endeavours to pay the son $950,000 and transfer an expensive car and these sorts of things. And what the settlement agreement also has is a fairly complex set of steps that the consortium, that the group of companies has to work through in order to sell this property, in order to get this $950,000. Now, what happens is the consortium attempts to sell the property. What I haven't told you is that our son here resides, or at all relevant times resided, in the property. And another thing I haven't told you is that the son supervised the construction of the property about 10 years ago and did not cause an occupation certificate to be issued in respect of the property. So the consortium, remember, using its best endeavours, trying to sell this property, is having some problems. And the real estate agents are saying, pretty tough to sell a property without an occupation certificate. Right. So our deadline for payment comes, and our son says, you had to pay, our consortium, you had to pay me $950,000 by this certain date. You failed to do it, and I'll issue a statutory demand against all of you in respect of that unpaid amount. Now remember, if you don't pay the statutory demand or you don't get it set aside, you can be wound up. So our various family entities, they want to get it set aside, and that's the dispute we're dealing with today. So our companies say there's a genuine dispute. There is a question, there's a rational argument we can make against these statutory demands, and so they should be set aside. So the court works through the issues to say, well, do we agree with that or not? And what the court does is linger particularly on the company's obligation. I'll withdraw that slightly. Lingers particularly on whether there is an obligation for the company to use its best endeavours to achieve a sale of the property, and so whether that has indeed happened, and whether that represents a real controversy between the parties about whether there's been compliance with this deed, or whether it was just a flat out, you have to pay $950,000, if you don't, it's a breach. So what the court finds in working through these things is that there is a rational controversy. There are two arguments. There's a genuine dispute about whether, as the son would say, you're going to pay me $950,000, end of story, or whether, as the consortium, the group of family companies would say, look, we used our best endeavours to try to sell this property, and for a number of issues, partly due to the son's failure to get this occupation certificate, we were unable to, and so we're not in breach because we did use our best endeavours. The court says one of those two might be right, and there's a genuine dispute about who it is. And so the court set aside the statutory demands. And by way of footnote, this might not be the end of the disputes relating to these various entities, because what the court also found is that these are well-funded litigants in a bitter dispute. So it may be that we discuss other phases of these pieces of litigation in future, or it may be that we don't. But in any case, I hope there was some value for you in that chat, and I look forward to joining you again soon for another coffee and another case note. Cheers.